Hey, do you like a good book? A real good book? How about sci-fi? We have a sci-fi author with us today. You're going to love him. My name is Vin DeQuino. Our guest today is Jeremy K. Brown. Jeremy!
How are you?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good.
I've seen your work. I love your work. Now you have something new here. Seems that you've partnered up with someone.
Yes.
And did a book together. I'm always fascinated by that. I don't know how that works. You guys didn't beat each other up while you're doing this or anything, did you?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, talk to me a little bit about this new project. First of all, talk to me a little bit about you. You have an interesting background. You had a wonderful Christmas book that I shared with my grandchildren. Loved it. Talk to me a little bit about you, Jeremy.
So, well, I've been a professional writer since about '99, writing for newspapers, magazines, just about anything I could do. And then around early to mid-2000s, I met up with Chris, and we started talking about books that we were working on, projects that we were interested in, and out of that came Ocean of Storms, which is the book that we have now sold and will be released December 1st through Amazon. But in addition to that, I had also self-published Calling Off Christmas back in 2011, which we've talked about. And I've also written a number of young readers' biographies on Stevie Wonder, Ursula K. Le Guin, Amelia Earhart. So I've done a lot of different things. And I've also, I was at WWE for 10 years at their magazine. Was deputy editor of their magazine.
And WWE is the World Wrestling
Entertainment. Yep.
Wow.
So I did that, and then I was on the TV writing team for a little over a year. And so I've done just about every type of writing you can think of in one facet or another. So it's been quite an interesting journey.
Yeah. And so now you're into this new thing, and this is sci-fi. That's relatively new for you, right?
It is, definitely, though it's a genre that I've always been interested in. I grew up as a science fiction fan, both of books and movies. I love Philip K. Dick, Ursula K. Le Guin, Ray Bradbury, Robert Heinlein, on and on and on. So I was always interested in science fiction. And but as you know from Calling Off Christmas, I work in different genres. I'm always interested in stories.
I mean, Calling Off Christmas was a wonderful book, and it's fiction and it's fun.
Right.
Now this is a much more serious topic.
It is, definitely, yeah, definitely. It was sort of born out of the idea, both Chris and I were big fans of the space program. We grew up in the shadow of the moon landings. We were both born in 1972. Both of us, there was only one moon landing in our lifetimes, and I was a month old when it happened. So,
oh, God, I remember that. I was working in a restaurant, waiting on tables, couldn't wait to get out of there. And I said, I'll never make it home in time. And one of the waitresses said, I only live 2 blocks away. Why don't you come to my house? Right. I said, done.
Yeah.
And I went there so I could see the actual landing.
Yeah, it must have been incredible.
Oh, amazing.
Even in the, as into the late 70s and early 80s, there was still so much talk about that. We're going to go back to the moon, and there's going to be a moon base, and then we're going to go to Mars, and space exploration was still very much a topic of conversation.
And there was that whole Sputnik thing. We used to have a donut shop called the Spud Nut. And everyone was into it.
Right?
It was a
definitely.
Big thing.
And
so, tell me about this Ocean of Storms. Now, what is this all about? And then I want you to talk to me about this partnership. How does that work? To say, okay, I write a line, then you write a line, and I write a line, you write a line. No,
not that different. Yeah, not that dissimilar from that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get into that. But the book is really about a second space race and what kicks it off. And Earth receives a signal from the moon of devastating proportions. It's an intense electromagnetic
someone is trapped
pulse.
up there? Or?
Well, it's someone has left something there for us to discover, and they have, they have sent this signal to Earth to reach us and sort of bring us back to the moon. It's sort of a desperate kind of situation.
Wow.
And what happened?
Human or?
Well, I don't want to say. You gotta,
Sorry.
You gotta
buy the book.
Yeah, buy the book December 1st. But but basically what happens is it's so serious that they say we have to send people back there to investigate what this is and uncover what this mystery is. And at the time in this book, NASA is very depleted financially, and no one has really given much thought to returning to the moon or to any kind of space
Yeah.
program. So they have to scramble.
So many other things we have to be worrying about.
Exactly, exactly. So they have to think outside the box a little bit, and what they do is they bring a pair of archaeologists on board. And NASA actually did this for the last Apollo mission. They had geologists come to the moon, and they trained with them and
Yeah.
taught them how the ins and outs of space flight. But they were geologists; they were not astronauts originally. And so we sort of took that idea and said, okay, well, what if they brought archaeologists up there, people who would actually know how to uncover something that was buried,
Yeah.
beneath the lunar surface.
Because it came from it was buried up there. It wasn't just lying on the surface.
Right,
anymore.
it's something that's buried far below, but below the ocean of storms, which is where Apollo 12 landed, which was the second moon landing in November of 1969. So hence the title. So it's buried beneath the ocean of storms. They don't know how to get to it, and they don't really have the resources to mount a moon mission the way they did back during
Yeah.
the space race in the 60s. So they really had to start kind of almost rebuilding the space program and the Apollo program from the ground up again. And it kind of kicks off a space race between the U.S. and China, which is the other major superpower when it comes to space flight. So that's sort of where the story begins. And then, of course, as we evolve and as the story moves along, a lot of twists and turns happen, and maybe they discover that there are some people back on Earth who are working against them, who don't want them to uncover what's there for their own reasons. So there's a lot of twists and turns, and but ultimately for us, it's a hopeful story. It's about when terrible things happen, human beings, all of us, all over the world, can come together towards a common goal, and hopefully that what they discover will lead us all into a better future. So we think it's a timely book as well, in the world, given the world we live in.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know.
So where did the idea originate? Was it with you or with Chris?
Well, I had a very rough idea of it, very rough. It was a screenplay that I was working on, and all that remains in this book is basically the signal coming to Earth and a return mission to the moon. It was an older astronaut who was an Apollo astronaut who was due to go up on like Apollo 18 or 19, but it got scrubbed, never got his chance, and kind of always felt like he had missed out on what could have been a tremendous opportunity. And it was kind of a story about growing older and regrets and things like that, but also second chances. And then what happened was the Clint Eastwood movie came out, Space Cowboys, which I don't know if anyone remembers this movie, but basically it was kind of that. And I was like, well, I guess that's not going to work for me,
Yeah.
And so I sort of put it on the shelf. But the idea of how we could get back to the moon stuck with me. And so Chris and I we worked together at a publishing company in the Bronx, and we would just talk all the time about stories, about things we were working on, about ideas that interested us. And again, as I said earlier, we both loved the space program. And so we were talking about what would it take to get America to go back to the moon, and it would have to be something huge. And I said, well, it's funny, I was kicking around this idea, but I never really took it anywhere. And then within a day or two, we had something going, and we both just said, let's just write this together.
And it was happening.
Just for fun. It was really just for fun.
So talk to me about that part. So what, she email you a part and you read it and you add to it, or how did that work?
Yeah, so he would write, he and I just talked about it. We did a whole outline, which I usually don't do. Chris is very meticulous. He's a very organized planning type of writer, and that worked really well actually for this book because there's a lot of moving parts. But I sometimes tend to just sort of sit down and go and just see where the story goes. But we had an outline, and then we said, okay, you'll do chapter 1, I'll do chapter 2, chapter 3, back and back, and we'll just bat it back and forth. And I remember he did chapter 2, which is now chapter 3 in the book, which is where we introduce our two heroes, Alan Donovan and Elias Zell, who are the two archaeologists. And he sent it to me, and he said, I know I haven't seen chapter 1 yet, but this is kind of what I'm thinking. And I read that, and I was like, oh, we got something. We're going. All right. And so I said, and it almost became we've talked about this before, like a friendly competition. I was like, okay, you think that was really good? Well, let me show you what I'm going to do. And then I kicked it back to him.
That sounds great.
And it was good.
Had Chris written a book before? Is this his first?
No, he's written other books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's written, I believe it was two previous novels. And then this one, and then he also has another book coming out, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, so yeah, he's definitely, experienced
he's a
writer.
seasoned writer.
Absolutely.
And that's good. So then, so the two of you worked together back and forth. So did you do like a whole chapter, or you did part of a chapter? Or?
Yeah, it was really just chapter for chapter. Chapter
Wow.
1, chapter 2.
He'd do a chapter, then you do a chapter.
Right.
He'd do a chapter, and you. Wow.
And then we would send that chapter back to the other and say, okay, what worked, what didn't, and then we put notes and say, this is great, or maybe we could do it this way.
Was it all done email?
Pretty much. I mean, for the first 2 years, I guess.
Oh, how long did this take you?
Oh, well, let's tell you that. We started this book in 2002.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we finished it in 2005, by which point I had left the publishing company, gone on to WWE. So then it became more email. But from 2002 to mid-2004, right before I left, it was like, we were at work, and obviously we had our day jobs and we had our responsibilities.
Yeah.
But like at lunch or coffee break or whatever, we'd go over chapters and go over notes. But then once I went over to WWE, and
you weren't there to do it.
Yeah, mostly email and phone, and because he's down in Queens.
So it started in 2002.
2002.
And when did it finally finish?
The final draft was 2005, I want to say, really, where we felt like this is a locked book. This is good to go. We started shopping it around about 3 years, give or take, off and on.
Yep, takes a while.
Yeah, got some interest from agents, but nothing really concrete. And then we sort of put it on the shelf for a little while. He worked on his next book. I did Calling Off Christmas and all my other various and sundry freelance work. So we kind of worked on their project, but this always was in the back of our minds. And then it sort of just came back around.
When did it come back around?
Late 2015 was really when it started.
This thing sat like for 10 years.
Almost. I mean, we had actually, I'll backtrack a little bit, because we had thought about self-publishing.
Right.
Which you and I have done.
Yeah.
And we said, let's just get it out there, because The Martian came out, and I said, look at this. There's interest in NASA again.
Yeah.
And a lot of what was happening in the Martian, even though they're very different, from a plot perspective, but the fact that the U.S. and China were working together and all these other elements, we were like, that's all in Ocean of Storms. We got to get it out there. So let's just self-publish it. And so we actually dusted it off, updated it, because originally the book took place in 2012, which at the time was the distant future, because we were going to tie it into the whole Mayan end times prophecy and all this other stuff. And we said, let's just take that out, and we also had to factor in a lot of changes that had happened. The space shuttle program had been decommissioned. A lot of other changes had happened in NASA that we wanted to incorporate. So we did that. And then we said, okay, let's get it out there. And just around the time that we were going to self-publish, we got a bite from 47 North, which, then led us to where we are now with the book coming out December 1st.
And 47 North did a lot of the editing and...
They did, yeah. They worked with us throughout, and they were tremendous. They were great to work with. They put us with a developmental editor who read the book and kind of, made suggestions and tweaks and really helped. We were saying, thinking in the theme of archaeology, he was almost like the archaeologist who sort of brushed off the dust here or polished something up there and showed us the book that was underneath the book that we had submitted and tightened it up, and I think really made some great changes. And he was a great collaborator too. It wasn't like, this is what it should be. It was like, I think this is where we should go. So it was a great process to work with them. And they've been tremendous in the support of the book the entire way.
So now you've gotten this together, and tell me a little bit about your writing style. When and where do you write?
So I write whenever and wherever I can, with a day job and
between
family.
schedules.
Yeah, definitely. But I try to do it in the mornings when I can, before everything kind of ramps up.
So you get up early and...
When I can, yeah. I'm not much of a morning person, but when I can. And my goal, what I always do, is 500 words a day. That's when, especially when I'm locked into something. I say I got a deadline I've got to hit. I do 500 words a day, and at least. It can't do less. I can do more, but I have to hit that 500. And if you do that, it adds up. Because then it just in a work week, that's I'm terrible with math. It's 2,500 words, but so it adds up. And so if you do that, then.
So you do have a set discipline that you practice.
Definitely, yes, definitely.
Yeah. I know that it differs with authors. There's some people who say I have to write 6 paragraphs a day, or I can't get it done, or
Right.
a chapter a day, and it must be even harder when you have a partner.
Yeah, it is in some ways, but also it's easier because when you're writing on your own, all you have is the voices in your head.
Yeah, that's
oh, this is terrible. No one's going to want to read this.
Yeah,
But you
but
get
now
that.
you have something to bounce it off.
You get that instant feedback.
Yeah,
You get that
yeah.
right away.
Interesting. I've never done it. I've always written my own, but it's a thought. You know,
Yeah.
I imagine myself saying no. You know,
Right,
or,
right,
What do you
yeah.
mean you don't like this? You
Yeah,
know,
no, right.
You know, but I suppose it's also a wonderful discipline. You know, you
Yeah.
do your part, gets checked, you do that. I have writers that I kind of do similar. You know, where that writer's writing a book and I'm writing a book. I proofread and edit that author's book, and that author proofreads and edits my book. You know, we kind of like go back and forth,
Right.
but not on the same book.
Yeah.
We have our own books.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So this book would appeal to people who are into the space program
Yeah,
or
true.
just general interest.
I think it would appeal to just about anybody, and that's
Yeah.
just my unbiased opinion. But really, it's a great science fiction story, but it's a great human story as well. It's a great story about what we can do together if we all just pull together. And really, one of the messages of the book is that we are really all in this together. This is what's going on in the world right now is not insignificant, and we need to put aside everything that's weighing us down and
Yeah.
remember that we're all sort of on the same path.
So talk to me a little bit about the afterworks.
Yes. So,
Right? Good. Let's let the audience see this book here.
yeah, absolutely.
So now that it's done,
Mm-hmm.
are you going on a speaking tour? What happens?
We're going to do some publicity, mostly online stuff.
Oh, okay.
We'll do some. We're actually going to be at the Mayapack Library on
Oh,
December
good.
11th.
Good. All
yes,
right.
at
That's
2
good.
p.m. There'll be
So
flyers
people can
going
come
around.
and see you there.
Yes,
Talk
definitely.
to you about the book.
Absolutely. And we're hopefully going to do some local signings and things
Yeah.
at bookstores around the area
This
and
way,
stuff, and
yeah.
a lot of online
Get
promotion.
the word out because,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes so difficult to get the word out where it needs to be.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
we're
one of the
learning.
hardest parts.
And there's so much out there now that conflicts for everyone's attention. So it's
Yeah.
very hard to stand above the crowd.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
what we're
I mean,
trying
think
to do.
about it. You go into the library, there's thousands of books all around you.
Mm-hmm.
Bookstores. I mean, literally millions of books are out there.
Yeah.
And how do people get to choose your book? So you really have to be your own spokesman. I work
Yeah.
with a number of writers. You know that. You've been part of the writers' workshop before. You see what it's like to get feedback. But when I'm with them, I try to tell them that writing is a business. You have to know how to promote yourself. And you have to get that book out there and get people reading it,
Right.
let people know it exists.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that's really important.
It's very tough, and with so many books out there,
Yep.
and it's hard to get people's attention. So that's what we're working on right now.
So
we're
now
out there.
that this book is out, I'm sure you're working on another one.
Yes,
And my understanding is that Chris is also working on another one.
Chris has one coming out.
Oh, he has one coming out.
March 21st.
I think we have a cover
Yes.
for Chris's brand new book. There we go.
Yep.
The Beachhead.
Yep.
So this is a brand new book.
Brand new
this
book.
This he did after this one.
After this, yes.
Now, is this also sci-fi or?
It's science fiction, yeah. It's a post-apocalyptic story that blends religion and science fiction and all different themes together. And it's really, really interesting and very different from Ocean of Storms, but not so different that people who love this book aren't going to be taken on.
So
a
here's
great
my
ride.
question for you, Jeremy.
Yes, yes.
Since he has a book out,
Yeah.
what is Jeremy doing?
Well, I've just submitted the next book that I'm working on, which
great.
is called provisionally right now titled Free Fall. And it's another science fiction story about a mining disaster that happens on an asteroid.
Now, is this based on a true story?
No, it is
okay.
from my imagination. So it's based on asteroid mining is something that NASA and other private organizations are taking very seriously because some of these
Asteroid
asteroids.
mining.
Yes, because some of these asteroids are out there are filled with very, rich minerals and metals,
Yeah.
platinum and other things like that, and they can be
Wow.
worth trillions of dollars if they're mined.
Really?
So there are a lot of organizations who are talking about mining asteroids, which interested me, and so I have a group of characters who are sort of contracted to go out to this asteroid and attempt to mine it, and then find themselves in a very difficult predicament.
Wow.
So that's
So,
where we're at.
Ocean of Storms.
Yes.
That was not based on a true story, but a true premise, but not a true story.
Well, the premise of what would it take for NASA and for humanity to return to the moon. So that,
Right.
because at the time, even when we started writing it, there was talk of a moon landing as early as 2019 for the 50th anniversary
Yeah.
of Apollo 11.
Wow.
That was back, in the mid-2000s that was being talked about. So it was kind of based on that idea of
Right.
how could we go back to the moon, and then we just took that and
So
broke
did
it
you have to
open.
do some serious research?
We did, yeah. We did a lot of
Yeah.
research,
Yeah. Writers don't often understand
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes, in order to write good fiction,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do some serious study of nonfiction.
Yes, right.
And I know, you know that some of my books are based on true events.
Mm-hmm.
And the research sometimes is like exhausting,
Yeah.
especially when you hit brick walls. And
Right.
you do hit, did you hit any brick walls with this?
Not so much brick walls per se, but I think just in the sense of just the sheer volume of making sure we got everything
there.
right. And I think already, we were, as we went along, we were seeing, there were some things that maybe fell through the cracks. We didn't, nail every detail, but we really worked hard to get, space flight,
So with
orbital
a
mechanics,
partnership?
all that right.
Who does the most research?
That was really, again, a 50-50. I think Chris has a great mind for it. He's very
great.
sharp, and he, like a lot of the political stuff that factors in, because there's a mounting tensions between the U.S. and China, which serves as the backdrop of the story. And that was a lot of Chris's
Yeah,
input.
so you have to go in
because-
there. So I'm interested. How does he get that into the story? How does he weave those real facts in with the others?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I think just finding a way to work it into the narrative so it doesn't sound like we stop the
Yeah,
story
right.
cold. So obviously we have a lot of scenes that take place in the Oval Office, and the president, our president in our story is a woman. So the president and her cabinet are talking about what's happening on the moon, but also talking about what's happening on Earth with the U.S. and China and the tension. So we sort of weave that into
so
conversations.
there's a lot of information
Yeah.
that has to go through.
So-
I tell you, one of the things that I try to get writers to understand is that it's important to do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get out there and you have to do your research and you have to make sure that there's a sense of reality to the
Yes.
story.
That was important to us.
Yeah.
It's funny that
Yeah.
you mentioned that, because we really wanted to feel like these fantastical things that are happening, and as those, when you read the book, you'll see there's some pretty crazy stuff that goes on, but we wanted it to feel like it's taking place in the world that this is something that could happen. And so that despite all of the crazy things that go on, we wanted it to feel, politics and the government still functions the way it would in the real world, and people still behave the way they do in the real world. So it's not this.
Jeremy, a good
Futuristic.
number of our viewers
Mm-hmm.
are writers, and they're looking for advice. We have about a minute and a half
Mm-hmm.
to give them the gem that they came here for.
Right.
Talk to me. What do we need to tell these young writers
Ju-
or old writers?
Yeah, it's very tough, because you really, I think the best advice is read a lot, but also just write. Just write. every
Readers
day.
are leaders. Writers are fighters.
Right. That's great. Yeah.
I mean, writers,
Absolutely.
you have to fight through. It's
Yeah.
not, you can't just take the first version of the story.
No, definitely not.
You work it, you rework it.
Right.
I tell people it's not writing a story that's difficult, it's working
Yeah.
a story.
Yeah. Writing
It's
it.
difficult.
Most of writing is rewriting. Well, my rule is I call it first draft, worst draft. Get that first draft out there. It could be as horrible as you want it to be. No one's going to read it anyway, and then you can clean it up.
There's your lesson. Get out there. Number one, get the book started. And number two, work it, work it, work it. And don't forget, you have to do research. Jeremy,
Thank
What
you.
a pleasure to have you here. It's a treat. When you finish your new book,
Yep.
come on back.
Love to.
And maybe you could even bring Chris back with you.
Be great.
I know he has some difficulties today. Thank you for joining us. Stay with us. A pleasure to have you. Keep watching One on One.